People, welcome to this ordinary meeting of the Masterton District Council, and we'll start as usual with their karakia. We have no apologies, we have no public forum. I'll just get Karen to speak to us regarding part of the agenda being taken away.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to advise that I have withdrawn the report 7.4 on the agenda, water meter charging implementation report, and advise the Mayor about this in accordance with Standing Orders 9.9. We received some really late advice, and that has implications particularly around our treatment of shared properties, so we need to do a bit more work on that, so hopefully we'll come back to the next meeting with that further advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, page 6, minutes of the council meeting held on December 11. So we need to move the true and correct record. Moved Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Lennox. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Page 20, minutes of the council meeting held on December 18. The mover. Moved to and correct record, Councillor Lennox, seconded Councillor Bowyer. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Page 25, minutes of the council meeting on December 19. Move for that. To and correct record. Moved Councillor Teacher, seconded Councillor Johnson. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Page 32, minutes of the extraordinary council meeting on December 19. Somebody move that to and correct record. Moved Councillor Teacher, seconded Councillor Bowyer. All in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Excuse me?
Carried.
I've just got a
Yes.
point.
Okay, Councillor Johnson, yes.
Yeah, just on page 36 we talk about the hockey, and so I just wondered whether we could have an update on feedback from the Hockey Association on the 110k, and also we talked about having a non-voting councillor observer on that, and just wondered what the update would be.
Thank you. I can say that I'm meeting with Fraser Malman this week, and I'll have an update after that regarding how it's all set up.
Great, thank you.
Okay, page 41. Yes, Councillor Paul.
Just on page 37, there's local water done well. I just wonder if you could tell us going forward when we'll be getting information on where the AOG's up to, what issues we're looking at. I suppose I'm just...
We have a workshop next Wednesday which will cover, which will be totally on that.
Okay, and I know we don't make decisions there. I'm just worried about the consultation paperwork arriving, and it's just often a flaw of council that we're too late to change.
Sorry, Councillor, it's on the agenda today to discuss. It's an information item to update you on. This part is just confirmation of the minutes. Is there anything in the minutes that is...
No, I just wanted to bring it up.
Okay,
Nice.
no, but it's on the agenda later on today.
Thank you. Okay, we move to page 41. The traffic bylaws amendments, Kitchener Street. Steph.
Thank you. I will have Nathan Hyde, he is our graduate policy
Okay.
advisor.
Hi, Nathan.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to seek council approval for changes to the Waitarapa Consolidated Bylaw Part 10 traffic that introduce a shared path That's a special vehicle lane for pedestrians and cyclists on Kitchener Street, and no stopping areas on Kitchener Street. So just a very high-level overview of the proposed changes. There's the special vehicle lane, that's the shared path, which is a 2.5 metre wide concrete path along the northern side of Kitchener Street, and the no stopping area, which is 8 metres from Kippenberger and Kitchener Street, extending eastward for 47 millimetres on the northern side and southern side of that intersection. The rationale and the benefits for this is that it will improve safety and accessibility, it will respond to community needs, and it aligns with our council outcomes. The background and the legal context for these changes comes from the Wairarapa Consolidated Bylaw Part 10, Traffic. It's authorised under the Local Government Act 2002 and the Land Transport Act 1998, Clause 21.1. Each District Council can maintain and update schedules for traffic control measures. In terms of consultation, property owners / developers in the immediate area will be notified. Staff recommend the option 1 to approve the amendments, the advantages of which are that it improves safety and accessibility, it responds to the community demand for safer alternatives, and it aligns with Council's strategy for efficient infrastructure. The next steps would be that the Council resolution would be to add the changes to Schedule 2D, the special vehicle lanes, and 2F, no stopping areas. In the traffic bylaw, there would be public notification, which would publish the updated schedules to the Council website, notify local property owners / developers by letter, and it would be implemented through signage and road markings in accordance with the land transport rules, and finalise the footpath construction and marking of no stopping areas.
Thank you. Right, any questions? Councillor Elena.
Yeah, Nathan. Yeah, thank you, Nathan. Stephanie, a couple of questions. Will there be any homes affected by that no stopping lane?
So, on the northern side of this area, there's just being developed at the moment, so nobody actually lives both north and to the east of this area, but there is plans for a...
Yeah, there's plans for some residential units and lifestyle development areas, so we'll notify the developer of that. And there are some houses on the other side of the road, and so we'll be notified by leader as well.
On the other side, they can stop. But on the side that the path's down, potential future houses, will they be coming in and out of the street or through a residential space?
There will be a dedicated road for them to enter and exit.
Off Kitchener Street?
Yeah.
It was my understanding, but we will follow that up with our representative.
So there's no one to check whether it's going to be a pain in the backside or not?
Not yet, no. It's still under development. They haven't actually been built yet.
If it doesn't go ahead, what will be the plan here?
We would need to look at our alternative options. It's really just an extension of the path that already exists on Gordon Street and Cow Heights, but we would need to consider what other routes could be done.
And the cost of the lane?
So all the costs are being met by development contributions. I don't have the exact figures on hand, but we could.
Any further questions? No further questions. Somebody's prepared to put the recommendations on page 41. Moved by Councillor Bayer, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Any further discussion? If not, we'll put the recommendations. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. We'll then go to page 50, the adoption of the draft dangerous, affected and unsanitary buildings policy and statement of proposal. And Stephanie.
Thank you. I'm Sophie Bradley, our policy advisor, to speak to
Okay,
this
thank
one.
you.
Manager's having a crazy day today. Thank you, Your Worship. Tēnā koutou. This report seeks your approval of the dangerous, affected and unsanitary buildings policy, a statement of proposal for consultation. The key aim of this policy is to provide guidance to Council when it is informed of potential dangerous, affected or unsanitary buildings in the district. Definitions of these buildings are set out in pages 51 and 52 of the agenda. We must have this policy as set out in the Building Act of 2004. It must include some key elements, such as how we will perform our functions under subpart 6 of the Act, our priorities in performing those functions, and how the policy applies to heritage buildings in our district. The policy has incorporated some early engagement feedback from MB and Pohere Taonga Heritage New Zealand, We think that our current approach is working in that we do not proactively inspect all buildings, but we respond quickly to complaints and information received from the community or staff. We're proposing some improvements to the policy as part of this review to take account of legislative requirements, improve transparency and consistency, and update the policy structure and clarify how the policy is applied within the Council's broader strategic context. While the wording of the policy has been revised for clarity, the practical implementation remains unchanged. Further details on the proposed changes are set out on pages 53 to 55 of the agenda. We recommend that Council adopt the draft Dangerous, Affected and Unsanitary Buildings Policy and Statement of Proposal for consultation. The policy takes into account feedback received through early engagement period and more accurately reflects our approach and current practice. Consultation will run alongside our consultation on the dog policy and control of dogs bylaw from the 21st of February to 21 March. The Hearings Committee will consider submissions in April and we will present final options to Council in May of this year. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? No questions, okay. We move to the recommendations on page number 51. Somebody prepared to move those? Move Councillor Johnson, second Councillor Goodwin. Any further discussion? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I'd just like to congratulate you on the two amendments which include inclusion of heritage building definition and also inclusion of when we consult with iwi hapu and hapore mai. Thank you.
Thank you for the report. Through reading, I'm just pleased to hear that unsanitary buildings are in common in Masterton. So I think the team has been doing a good job and this will just help reinforce scale. Thank you.
Councillor Bayer. From my point, I think one of the things that is worth stressing is the fact that this is not applying to earthquake-prone buildings. I had a couple say to me about earthquake-prone. This actually doesn't have anything to do with it. No. Okay, well, we've moved and seconded the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. We then move to page 90. Adoption of the draft dog policy and draft control of dogs bylaw, and this will be Steph as well. And no, Nathan.
Thank you.
I'm back. So, thank you. The purpose of this report here is to seek Council adoption of the Statement of Proposal, the draft dog policy and the draft control of dogs bylaw for the purposes of public consultation from the 21st of February to the 21st of March 2025. So why is this being reviewed? The Council is legally required under the Dog Control Act 1996 to have a dog policy and control of dogs bylaw. Both are due for 5-yearly review, ensuring that they remain fit for purpose. So just to go into a very high-level analysis and advice that we've done for some of the background research and statistics, we've found that the most common complaint is roaming, and one of the highest infringements is a failure to keep a dog controlled/confined. And we've done some very early stakeholder engagements with some groups like the SPCA and the New Zealand Vet Association and incorporated their feedback into our review. Our amendments can be summarised into 4 key amendment themes, the first of which is changing some of the dog access in selected public places. The second is amendments to reduce roaming and nuisance. The third is to provide some more flexibility to the community. And the final one is some updates for clarity. So our recommended option is option 1, to approve the draft documents and SOP for consultation. The required consultation period, as previously mentioned, would be that 21st of February to the 21st of March, with a hearings date scheduled for the 9th of April, deliberations on the 30th of April, and final adoption on the 14th of May. To summarise the report, it really just seeks to ensure that Masterton's dog management is balanced, safe, and considerate of community needs and wildlife protection. Adopting this statement of proposal for consultation allows the public to provide critical feedback and before any final decisions are made. Staff recommend Council adopt the SOP and draft dog policy and bylaw for public consultation.
Okay, questions for Nathan. Councillor Lennox.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your report. Just around the implementation costs that will be incurred, do we have a rough idea of what that's going to cost?
Once adopted, any implementation costs like new signage or anything would be managed within existing budgets and addressed through the annual plan process.
Any further questions? Councillor Turton?
I noticed on page 146, there's no using motor vehicles to exercise dogs. I'm aware that some people ride those scooters and they do take their dogs. Is that classified as?
So our definition of vehicle here comes from Schedule 2 of the Land Transport Act. So it's anything under Schedule 2 of the Land Transport Act. You wouldn't be able to exercise a dog alongside. It's
My understanding is that it's vehicles.
Yeah.
It's just scooters.
no, it's motor vehicles, not scooters or e-bikes or anything like that. Yeah.
Right, it's not, because sometimes that only means that people with disabilities have to get around and
No.
to give them
It's
towards exercise.
more aimed at vehicles on the road, yeah.
Yeah, and disability assist dogs would also be exempt from, if they need to be alongside a motorised scooter, for example, would be exempt from that.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions. Somebody prepared to move the recommendations on page 91? Moved Councillor Holmes, seconded Councillor Johnson. Any discussion? Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, thanks for your report. Just two things. Great to see that the roaming dogs number is down considerably, and also lost dogs. And I'll attribute that to a fantastic team who does a great job. But also too, I'd like to congratulate you on discretion for waiving surrendering fees rather than having the animals abandoned. I think that's a really good recognition of some people who possibly love their pets but have financial problems. So thank you.
Councillor Leonard?
Yes, I too just want to say thanks, I guess, for the foresight that you had around the Taranaki Dog Park. The one down Henley Lake, I drive past it every day and it's full use at all times, so I think that's going to be a great asset for that side of the community.
Any further discussion? I'd just like to congratulate you too on the depth of this report and also on the decisions made. I think it's congratulate councillors actually on that. I think it's been time that a lot of these decisions which have been made are going to clean up a lot of the problems that Terry and her dog team have. I'm particularly keen on to make ground on the people exercising their dogs on leashes through windows of cars, and also, if you like, on bicycles. Nothing more irritates me more. I think it's really, really bad for the dogs, and it's good to see that we're looking at that now. So, thank you so much. So, moved by Councillor Holmes, seconded by Councillor Johnson. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We now move to page 193, the Climate Change Advisory Group update, and Kylie.
Hello. So I'm here to present the Climate Advisory Group update paper. So it should be quite straightforward. We're looking to do two things. So firstly, to update the Climate Advisory Group Terms of Reference, which is part of their 1-year review, which is signalled in the Terms of Reference. And the intention of the update is to more accurately reflect the operational realities of the group. And secondly, we're asking that the $50,000 Community Climate Fund for the current financial year is carried over to the next financial year. So this will do three things. It'll enable a pool of $100,000 to be available in 25-26. It'll give time to consider the grant criteria, and it'll align the Climate Fund with the other council funds, which will enable council to consider all the funding requests at the same time. Are there any questions?
Right, any questions for Kylie? Yes, Councillor Lynn.
Currently, the funding requests are determined by the CAG, is that right?
Yeah.
But you're saying that would be transferred to the council grants committee?
So the CAG group, they make recommendations and then they have to be formally approved by the council. So
that process will stay the same, but the timing of it will just change.
As it stands, if you wanted to look at the criteria, that is something you could consider, but as it stands, nothing would change from this paper.
Except the time.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Somebody prepared to move the recommendations on page 193. Move Councillor Lennox, seconded Councillor Johnson. Any discussion? Okay, I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob,
Page-
could you please note my vote against?
So we'll get
Could you note my vote, that I voted against?
Oh, okay. Page 203, the 2025-26 annual plan consultation. David, who's having a crack at that? You?
I'll start. Thank you, Richard. The paper introduces the annual plan for 25-26 and the recommendation for the council to adopt the budgets prepared that are based on the long-term plan year 2 and that we don't take the plan to consultation with the community. That we do an informed approach with the annual plan. And the basis of that recommendation is in the report. The LTP Year 2 predicted a 7% increase in rates as an overall outcome. The the annual plan Year 2 that we're proposing is 7.8%, so slightly more. The increases in the roading expenditure were predicted in the Year 2 of the LTP, so we have had a nearly 20% increase in the rates required for roading in Year 2, and that was in the LTP, and that's what we are continuing to recommend happens. We've workshopped the information around the need for the roading expenditure and the level of input from rates to continue to ensure that the roading assets are maintained to the right levels and are not recommending any reduction in the roading expenditure. Despite NZTA's changes in their focus and funding, the council share that was budgeted and indicated in LGP Year 2 is continuing in our recommended budgets for Year 2, and in fact increased 2.7% more than what was in the LGP Year 2 for roading. A number of other cost changes that are relatively minor are noted in the report as to the reasons why the rates are going up for next year and why they vary slightly from Year 2 of the LTP. But in terms of significance of those changes, the officer staff recommendation is that the changes aren't significant enough to consult the ratepayers and public about, given that the LTP was the main consultation last year. So I can respond to any questions about what's in the budget and the budget variances, but I'll leave Tanya and Josie to just speak to the consultation aspects of the report.
Yeah, sure.
Josie.
Certainly. So as David mentioned, the second part of the paper is around consultation of the annual plan, and we are recommending an engagement approach with an informed basis. And the reasons for this is that there are no legal requirements to consult. As David said, there are no significant or material changes from what we planned in the long-term plan. There's also no viable options to consult on, particularly since the drivers for the rates increase are primarily external and cannot be controlled by the council or the community. And also the time taken to find some viable options could also delay the process. There are also a number of other significant consultations happening at the same time, particularly local water's done well, and this could potentially lead to consultation fatigue or confusion. There's also been extensive community consultation done already. through the long-term plan process that we signed off in June last year. And there's also considerable resources, both cost but also time and energy for any consultation. And so for these reasons, we are recommending an engagement approach for the annual plan. That gives us more flexibility on how we do it. It's also more cost effective. And it's also an opportunity to really encourage and promote the community to consult on other consultations that are happening at the same time. Again, in particular, local water is done well. It also means that if there is any feedback on the annual plan, we can use it in the next annual plan or through an LTP amendment.
Thank you, Josie. Tony, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, just reiterating, I guess we have in the past too, often you find in year 2, because it's just on the back end of an LTP where we've done a really thorough and consultation engagement, that we're not always anticipating significant change from that process, and in this case there hasn't been, and where we have had situations like this in the past, we have chosen to take an informed approach that enables us to give the community an update on where we're at and where we're tracking. And like Josie's already pointed out, if we don't have viable options that they can actually influence or provide feedback on, then the consultation risks becoming a meaningless process as well, when we have got other bigger issues that we do require feedback on at the moment.
Thank you. Okay, questions? Councillor Helena?
Thank you. I'm just wondering if it's proved that we don't consult this year, but we engage. What are the opportunities for the community to give feedback in an engagement process? What's your plan and thinking around that?
What we have done in the past is just provide options in the consultation document if they do have feedback, either on the annual plan or in other ways.
The engagement document?
Yep, how they can actually provide feedback to us, and that could be through our website, through request to fix forms, through the service requests with customer services. It could also be if they want to, they can provide feedback at any time. It's an ongoing conversation with our community.
And then what happens with that feedback in terms of coming back to legal?
As Josie noted, if we did receive feedback from the community in response to an informed campaign, then we would obviously collate that, and we can consider that as part of the next process for annual plan or LTP amendment if that's where we move forward.
So that feedback can be considered
as part of a future process.
Initiate change.
Sorry, can I just jump in? So we wouldn't be specifically asking for feedback through this process, because that's consultation, right? And so if the decision is that we would just engage. If people want to provide us feedback through our normal channels, then we would deal with that feedback in the ordinary way, if that's through to, so, because quite often people use that as an opportunity to talk to us, let us know where things are going wrong, there's potholes or those sorts of things. So we would forward that back through to the relevant department in the ordinary way. If there's information there on rates or the things we're actually proposing to do for LTP year 2, we'll take that on board. We'll feed that into any further discussions that we might have, depending on what the feedback is. But we would not be collating that information and providing that back to influence what is then going to be in the annual plan. That's the difference between the consultation and the engagement approach, just to be really clear, and the reasons why we wouldn't be doing that is set out in the paper.
So you will be feeding back that information, but it won't be, I feel there's a contradiction there. You will be feeding back information, but you won't.
We won't be feeding it back to council to then be provided as analysis that would go into the annual plan document to be adopted in July. Depending on what the feedback is, if it's commentary about service levels, what we do is that we pass that back on to the roading department, for example. So it will go within the council operations. If it is about future work that people would like in the long-term plan, for example, then we'll just collate that information as officers internally, and then when we start our next process, we can incorporate that. That's what we usually do at the start of an annual plan or an LTP process anyway. We look at all of the information that people have provided to us, and then that goes into suggestions for our budgets or when we've got particular issues.
Okay, so then what's the main purpose of engagement?
I'll hand over to you.
The intent would be an inform campaign, so it's an opportunity to provide an update to our community on, essentially the core messages would be that, we are tracking, we're on track to deliver what we had signalled in year 2. There are a few variations, these are what they are. None of them have been identified as being significant, so therefore we're not consulting, and we explain why. And then we outline updates on some of the key projects that are happening at the moment.
So we will be engaging with the community or communicating with the community around some of the changes that might not be considered significant by council staff or other departments. And that will be decided what we're going to engage in if we choose not to consult.
If it was informed, it's essentially outlined in the paper, some of the key variations which David's just talked to as well and outlined in the paper. The informed document would reflect those points and then, like I say, provide updates on key projects so that we're keeping our community informed.
But my question is, when will that be decided, what we engage on?
We would bring a paper back to council with a draft informed document to be considered.
On that, Tom, I take your point totally. I think the engagement has to be really solid. If we're not going out, I think it has to provide an opportunity for the community to still have their say on things. And I've got some particular ideas myself, which I'm really keen to workshop, which would involve all the councillors being involved in meeting with the public and whatever. I personally think the engagement process could have more value. Could have a hell of a lot more value if we do it right than going out to consultation. I think we'll meet a bigger section of people. Okay, any further get Councillor Booker?
I just want to support what you both said there. And
This is a question, Tom, at the moment. You aren't going to ask a question yet because the discussion will come.
Okay. And the question is, first question is that this feedback that we get, like all feedback we get, may of course influence councillors voting on issues. First question, maybe to you.
Yes, ordinarily, yes.
Yep. And I'm concerned about the wording that goes in the consultation document and our opportunity to criticise or whatever that wording. I see it as quite key. Can you tell us when we get to see a draft and how long we've got to change it, etc.?
We were looking at working to align the adoption or endorsement of an information document at the same time as the local ward has done well. So we'll be working for a time frame of 12th of March.
12th of March. Oh, so it's, okay, so it's 3 weeks away.
Yep.
Yep. It's not very long.
If councillors have anything they'd like to add to the points that we've indicated here, then we're writing it as we speak. So
okay.
if there's some guidance that the council would like to provide today, that would be really helpful.
Yep. Well, I would like. I'm conscious that I don't want council just putting down the specific things it's already talked about. It's giving citizens context, and one of them, there's been recent economists commenting on the fact that New Zealand is in the worst per capita recession that it's been in for over 30 years. And to me that's relevant and should be there. We got a document from Kane.
You've got a question, Councillor Hawkins. We're all going into discussion.
Well, I'm just raising it now because I was invited to. I'm not going to say no.
In the discussion part, sorry, councillor, is what I meant.
Well, of course. In the Kane sent out a commentary on the roading, and it's been a bit of an ongoing issue that that we're well behind what NZTA expects of us, and that they want 2% rehabilitation, and we're currently targeting 1%, which is 50%. They're targeting 9% for resurfacing, and we're targeting about 6%. It's his particular words which I just think need to be shared with the public, because it gives a context for our other expenditure, which may be much more important than roading, for all I know. Kane says that reaching those NZTA targets is neither feasible nor affordable for Masterton at this stage. And that really hits me, because it's probably quite a lot of money if you address it. And Kane is coming back in a couple of months, but probably too late for including his numbers in the documents. So I'm just very keen for that to be included in the wording. I forget how you put it. The
Consultation, engagement.
Yeah,
Okay, have we got any further questions?
Introduction to that. The only other question is just a request, really, that on page 209 it says in that point D that some members of the community recognise, no, we should just get on with it. I just don't think that sort of thing is it's not in the spirit of staff reporting. It's just a bit loose. I don't mind a politician saying it, but to me, for a staff member to pluck that out is, I don't know, it's a bit loose.
Thank you, Councillor Good. I must say that I've heard that comment so often in the last month that it's almost record proportions. Okay, any further questions? Okay, somebody prepared to move the recommendations on page 203? Moved Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Bowyer. Discussion. Councillor Hunt.
I'm really concerned, and I've had a lot of calls about the rural rate increase, and it does worry me. And I know last time we had a long-term plan, David Paris and I went out to Tanui and had a meeting with the residents out there. And I think it's very important that we have an engagement meeting out there this time at Tanui. We have to explain to the residents out there, the rural ratepayers who've had a massive increase this year, proposed massive increase. They've already had a massive increase last year. Their valuations have gone up, so they're being hit all round. So I think it's important that we go out to Tanui and engage with the people out there, and that's a prime example of what we can do, because we have to sell it to these people, we have to explain it to these people what's happened, the reasons why the rates are so high, and it's roading, completely roading. They get no other service at all, it's just roading. So we've got to explain to them what it is and what it's about. So I'm moving that we actually go out to Tanui. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, 2 points. There's been a lot of conversations in the community about a forestry levy. I think it's important that we indicate that we were doing work on that and exploring that option, so that at least the community knows that we've heard that and we're doing some work on it. The second thing is, I don't think we've ever done the exercise where we've looked at if 100% of roading was paid for both urban and rural. At the moment we have an urban and we have a rural split, whether that would soften the blow of rates increases by smoothing it out. So I'd be interested in maybe looking at that, because we do, I know it's a moot point, but urban people use rural people use urban roads, and at the moment we split it, and I wondered whether we could perhaps look at that exercise and what the implications would be.
The other thing with the forestry, you correctly worded that. The three councils are going to work together over that.
But we need to let the community know we're
Yes,
doing
we
that.
do. Fully agree.
Okay,
Can I just make a comment?
yeah, Councillor Blade, Councillor Elliott.
Actually, just following on from that, I think there also needs to be a difference between a commercial forestry and a carbon forestry.
Yeah.
Currently, legislation stops us from treating the trees that go onto these lands as an improvement. Now, we're all being sold something, telling us that by planting trees for carbon, that we are actually going to improve everything. So if it is an improvement, then we should be able to rate for that improvement. And that needs to continue. And we'll get discussions around production forestry, but we also need to be very, very severe on carbon as well. So, I hate to think central government's selling us a pup on this.
Councillor Elliott.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I agree with you, David, as well. I'd be up for coming out to see Tanui and other farming communities as well. But I guess for me, we've spent time looking through the budget. I know a few of us went back to David with some questions around where we could look at cost savings, and we got some really valid answers as to the ins and outs. So I think it's really important for the community to understand that we are looking at the figures and that we don't just tick it off and say, yeah, okay, another rate rise. None of us want a rate rise, but the reality is we do. So I think as council members, we actually need to be informing our community that we all associate with and giving the facts and actually explain to them that we do spend the time sitting down, crunching the numbers, and it's not just a paper that's passed in front of us and we just all tick and agree. So I think that's important. But like David, I'd be really open to engaging with the community in any sort of shape and form. I think as elected members, that's what we're here to do.
From my own point of view, just taking up from what David said too, I've had the pleasure actually of having meetings with, talks and chats with 2 or 3 rural people who are quite big farmers in the area, and they've got ideas about how things could possibly change, and my advice to them has been that yes, we are going, this engagement process is just going to give us the ideal opportunity to engage with these people. We've been invited to a couple of farms to kind of have a look and actually talk to the people. I'm really keen for councillors to do that. So I see this as being a real opportunity to say to our rural people, look, we do understand, and we will listen, and we are happy to hear from you guys. So I think we need to make a real effort this time to get out there and do the chat. So David will certainly be following up on that. Councillor Johnson.
I just wondered if David could give me some feedback on what the implications would be if we went 100% for our roading rather than the split.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. I'll try not to be too technical in the explanation, but the revenue and financing policy that Council has adopted charges a roading rate, and that roading rate is differentiated between the urban rating area and the rural rating area. So we take the total roading costs and we say this is rural's portion, this is urban's portion, and we then allocate that using 2 tools. One is the land value of the property, not the capital, the land value, and the other is a uniform charge. So every property pays a flat amount. So beach properties, lifestyle blocks, farms all pay the same amount. And then the land value rate, a farm is clearly going to have a much higher land value than a lifestyle block or a beach property. So the farms then get hit because there's a portion of the rates collected based on their land value. So higher land value properties pay higher roading costs, pay for those costs. The loading on the rural properties is because we're spending approximately 70% of the total subsidised roading budget on rural roads. So where we're spending the money, we're targeting the properties that are benefiting from that money being spent. So to change that allocation to, say, a general rate that is then allocated across all properties based on the property's land value, you would move a significant portion of the roading rates to the rural, from rural to urban properties. So the principles the policy is based on, I think, are sound, and if you want to change those, you need to go through a process of questioning those principles and deciding whether there's some other basis to allocate the roading costs. And that process is a review of the revenue financing policy, which we do every 3 years. So that's the short answer to that. The other thing from your discussion around the consultation with the rural community, I think part of that also needs to include an explanation by our roading engineers of where they're spending the money, where the benefits are, what roads are breaking down and needing more work, how often a road is rehabilitated or resealed, and actually show them or explain to them where the money's going, because it's a significant portion of the council's budget. NZTA fund a bit over 50% of it, but they put a cap on it. So we can't spend more than what NZTA say in terms of the program, even though their targets are up here. The money they give us is down here. So Councillor Goodwin's point that we're not going for the best target that NZTA is setting, there's a conundrum that they're not actually funding us to do that either. And if the community wanted to hit those targets, the community would have to put in significantly more rates funding to do that. So there's a lot of complexity around the roading budgets, and both how we spend it, how we get funded for it, and how we rate properties for it. So
It's a very good overview.
I hope that helps.
Thank you, David. That's excellent. Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, I suppose to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the main points of this engagement is a chance to raise what has changed since we set the budget in the LTP, a year ago, 9 months ago or something. And there have been changes, quite a few changes. Things like local water done well is a very big issue that's come along, and it may not affect year 2, but it affects the context of where we're going, which is, in my view, how we must take account of that when we're going forward. And so changes like the fact that we're underperforming in roading targets, changes like we've got local water done well, which could be bringing increased costs to our, especially poorer properties, they're relevant and need mentioning to the public, because especially the water one, it'd be the most complex thing, and the community out there don't know very much about it yet.
They're going to get to know a lot in the next 3 weeks.
Well,
Councillor Goodwin, I can tell you that.
We hope so, but it needs, to me it needs spelling out that that is something new that's come along since last June when we set that budget. And to some of us, it's relevant.
Okay, thank you, Councillor
Can I just respond to that? I must disagree with you, Councillor, that there is nothing new from when we set the LTP. We've signalled we don't have the detail. We still don't have the detail. We'll have more information to be provided through our consultation process. We signalled in the LTP what was coming, what the impacts could be. We provided as much information as we could at that time. In my view, nothing has changed between then and now. And there's certainly been no significant or material change that would require us to consult.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. I strongly disagree with pretty much everything I've heard about engagement and consultation. To me, engagement is an engagement. It's a two-way conversation. And all I'm seeing here is us telling people, and then maybe getting some crumbs of feedback that don't essentially come back to council in any formal capacity whatsoever. I've I've got a few notes from here, so I'll just read them from here if I may. I look at things like the comment around risk, the greatest risk to us, to me, that seems to be coming from the report is that we're going to get feedback that we don't like. Feedback in a formal, formal meeting that won't come to us otherwise. I think the comment about consultation fatigue, when I read the blurb about that, is absolutely, as I've mentioned before another time, patronising. We're underestimating the ability of our community to make decisions, to take this information and to tell us what they think about it. Again, we're just telling them what's best for them. I also hear comments like we're outsourcing the blame for any rates increase to other people over there. It's all other people's fault. It's not our fault. It's not what we're doing at the council. I was in a meeting with another relatively large organisation the other night. We're looking at a budget as well. And we constantly go through and trim wherever we can with a set defined budget. Here, I think comments like rates going up from 7% to 7.8% is a slight increase. It's not a slight increase to many in our community. We made at the school I work stationery free for the year, or for the last few years, which saves people approximately $30 a year. When the feedback we get tells us the times, the desperate lives people live, saying 7 to 7.8 is slight is completely misreading the needs of our community. I really strongly believe we should be consulting on this document, and I think that when we say engage, we're throwing them crumbs and thinking we know best, or fine, we know best. Maybe you can share a comment on a Facebook page. Maybe people are saying things like, I'm hearing this all the time, but it's a completely informal response. I believe we need formality around this. I know it's not going to come through. I can read the room already, but I'm really disappointed that we're not giving our community this opportunity. I think it's a massive cop-out. Again.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. If I could just reply from my own point of view, I haven't gone through for 15 years now consultation and engagement. I have come to the conclusion myself, and I've been a very strong supporter of consultation. I've come to the conclusion that we are going to be able to get through to the community and hear the community better through the engagement process, providing, as Tom and them have said, we do it right. And so I think that's going to be the key. That's my personal opinion. I think the engagement policy could be far more productive than going out to consultation. Okay. Yeah.
Perfect. Respond. So again, can I please, how are we going to get specific feedback, timely feedback about this, about the annual plan that's coming to council? Specific feedback about what's in it, how's it going to come back to council?
Karen's going to respond to that.
Sorry, Councillor, we're not in question time now, so the officers don't, it's not the time to respond. However, I will say that when we go out to our engagement sessions, you will be there, you will be hearing that feedback. We will do as much as what we can. As I say, when we hear building those things into our budgets, into our processes, and providing that back through the ordinary processes we have when we're talking about our budgets and our annual plan and our LTP plan.
I don't think that's an answer. I don't think you're giving us specific information about what's coming back to us. I don't think our community's been given that opportunity. I think that answer is a cop-out.
Certainly the feedback I've had from the community, Tim has been very strongly in favour of engagement, but you're hearing it differently. Okay, I think it'll be a recommendation. Sorry, Councillor Lynn.
Being too polite, just putting my hand up, and my eyes are directed the other way. Look, I just want to acknowledge Councillor Holmes' point. I think the burden is falling quite heavily on the rural sector in terms of roading. However, as a council, we decided to spend 44 million on nice-to-haves, and that's after deciding that we're going to focus on the priorities. We didn't do that, so those things come at a cost. And I just want to pick up on the point of Councillor Goodwin. Whatever we do, whether it's consultation or engagement, it's really important that we put it into context, because just engaging on year 2 of our program isolates our community from the other things that are happening in the coming years. And for me, that's been almost, well, it's not being transparent. In my view, whether it's consultation or engagement, we need to make sure the community know all of the costs that are coming, not just in year 2, but around year 2. And then we're in a better position to decide what is best for our community. And so certain things that we might have decided on and voted on might not now be a priority. There might be new priorities, such as local water done well. Can I ask a question in the space too, in terms of other expenditures that might be coming up? And it's probably to you, Mayors. Does council have to commit to flood mitigation on the Waipoua? And if so, when will that be known?
Well,
because it's a serious risk that we've talked about, and I know the CE has acknowledged that risk previously. And so I'm talking about sharing with the community up and coming costs and putting them into a context, not just isolating it to year 2. So
No, we
any
don't.
information on
We
that?
don't have to commit to anything, Councillor. And we've got a presentation on that next week.
So, but ratepayers don't have to commit to it.
Not unless you, as elected members, decide to make a call in their space.
Right. So, all right. So yeah, I just want to reinforce the point that whether it's consultation or engagement, let's be totally frank with our community and let them know all up and coming expenditures. And if it is engagement and there's some great stuff coming back, we should be using that to adjust what we're doing in the future if it's in the best interest of our community.
Thank you, Councillor. And I agree with all of what you say there. Councillor Tudor.
I don't want to trivialise what we've just been discussing, but I really want to bring up another point. And in a way, I need to thank you, Josie, or whoever the authors are, of the recommendations that you bring to us, because I've noticed recently that the implication for Māori, they're more considered and thought out, and I just want to thank you for that. It's not just a phrase that's trotted out, so that's for you and Stephanie to pass it on to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Tudor. So we have the recommendations. I've got here Councillor Bayer, Councillor Lennox. Yeah.
Sorry, so I just wondered if we could have clarified, Tania and Co will presumably write up the wording and of this document. When will it come back to us? How long do we get to, it's all happening within the next 3 weeks. When are we going to get the draft?
Is that for the engagement?
When do we get the draft on the engagement document so that we've got time to raise issues with you in a timely manner?
We'll get it to you as soon as we can. It's a bit of a lawyer's response, isn't it? But the same people are working on the local water done well document. So we've got 3 weeks that we're working towards. So we'll focus on that as a priority. But we will get a draft to you, so you do have an opportunity to know what the word proposed are before we get to the adoption meeting.
Yeah. Now, the recommendations on page 203-204, moved by Councillor Baird, seconded by Councillor Lennox. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you, Tom. Okay, we move now to page 217, which is local water done well update. Matt?
Can you please record my vote for that?
Absolutely. Yep.
And it was Thomas.
What, do you vote against it?
Yeah, just for me, it's just because I'm not clear on what engagement is looking like. I think consultation is the best option at this point in time.
Thank you. Right, Matt.
Morning, Your Worship. Morning, councillors. Right, local water done well update. So the purpose of this report is to provide you an update on where we're at with the program, and to get agreement on the Wairarapa and Tararua joint agreement, commitment agreement. So back in December, we said that we would provide you an update after a decision was made to expand the AOG by adding an additional member, and also providing the AOG with a mandate to prepare the draft consultation document. That is what we are. That's currently where we're at. So the AOG is well formed and has been progressing with numerous engagements on a number of matters in relation to Wairarapa and Tararua. The majority of the work in the last month or two has been focused on the financials, and this is on both the proposal and the current enhanced status quo. The consultation document, or this portion of the document that will be the Wairarapa plus Tararua option, is in draft, and we expect to be able to see a revised iteration of that in the next few days. That will go to the AOG next week for a second review. We then intend to take that section, and each council will add that to our own consultation document, which will form both the enhanced status quo plus the proposal, or the alternative option, Wairarapa and Tararua. And the purpose of that is so that each of the four councils have applied a consistent approach in terms of what information they're sharing for consultation. The wider consultation document is, as Karen said, with the same team, so Josie and Tanya are working on that, and we'll be bringing that back in a couple of weeks. On the 5th, next week, we intend to have a workshop where we will present all the work done to date on both options. The intent is to then potentially the week after, depending on how much we get through, we may have time for a second one before we proceed with actual consultation.
Okay, Mayor, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Helena. Councillor Swivel.
Given that you're just proposing 2 workshops, I'm concerned that our feedback, council feedback, which has been very limited in this, reasonably limited in this process, being the time frame and other reasons. When would we have a chance, for instance, in the minutes of the last meeting, it was discussed of having, 20 or 50 or whatever year no harmonisation clause. And since saying that, I know I've thought that it would be interesting to discuss having a different approach to it, of rather than putting a time frame on it, of saying, and I don't know how this would mesh with the entity in legal terms, but for the, essentially for the constituent councils or connections to get a vote on whether a thing like harmonisation is introduced. And the reason I say it, and I mean I immediately think of, say, our own chamber, where you can change the rules. We could suspend standing orders right now. And it's 75% majority wins. And enables us to do that. And I thought maybe that's a different approach. If 75% of the connections in whatever entity we agree to harmonise the prices. That may be a good thing for us to talk about and think about. And look, I freely admit, it's very selfishly done on the basis of those Masterton urban connections, 10,200 of them. So when is a good time, given that we're running out of it, to discuss, I know it's been mentioned, the time frame, we'll ban it for 500 years or something. When can we discuss some alternatives? Like what I'm just talking about.
Yeah, I think, we are maintaining focus on the consultation document on what we are required to consult on and what we can consult on, and it won't include anything that requires a decision post-consultation. It won't include anything that a board would make a decision on, or anything that you would expect to see in a shareholders agreement or anything of that nature. It'll speak specifically to the options that are being tabled.
So could, just for, certainly for my benefit, can we fairly soon have a discussion about how, what I was talking about shareholders' agreements, what they can achieve and what realistic things they can set in the future.
We will
have a discussion about that, because you need to know where what the end point is sometimes to discuss the.
We will share information around some of those artefacts in our workshop, but we won't be discussing the content or anything of that nature. So the primary focus now is the consultation and that pack.
Yes, but as long as we do have a session on that shareholders agreement, for instance, what it can do, what it can't do, the various mechanisms you could use to engage the connectors or the constituent council.
Yeah, there will be some things we talk about next week, which will be around the controls, what controls for potential shareholding councils might look like versus what current state is. So you'll get some information there.
Legally they would be allowed to look like.
So I think it's important because it's not clear, certainly it won't be clear to the community, it's not necessarily always clear to me, on what is for the consultation, what might be down the track for a shareholder agreement, what's in the plan and what's for the board. So we can talk about those. So as the things crop up, we can put those into where the category is, at what point we need to talk about that. But it is really important to understand where those things lie, because we don't want to confuse the community when we go out with consultation about it being in the decision that they're required to put input into, when actually it's a bit further down the track. So we do need to be really clear about that and address these things in a really informed way and say, well, this is not for this part, but actually it will come later.
Yeah. One further thing, I'm not sure it might be your one, is that I would imagine, I would hope, local government in New Zealand, this is happening all over New Zealand, and are there any webinars or things we can link into where these issues, you know what I'm saying? It's probably being done 75 times around New Zealand at the moment, and it's not always a good idea to reinvent the wheel.
Yes, so I know that LGNZ are covering this off in webinars, and there's the meeting, I think it's next week, the whole of council's session on Thursday. Yes. So yes, the councillors will be provided with that information as well.
But specifically, what I'm talking about, the shareholder agreements and that, could you at least maybe ask if there's anything coming up on that?
I'll have a check. It would be also worthwhile as a member for you to contact them directly and ask if that's going to be on the agenda.
You'd do that a lot better than me.
Okay, any further comments? Questions? Councillor Lennox?
Just a couple of questions. So just in regards to the, outside of the 30 grand that the group are going to be allowed to spend, sorry Maz, have we got a figure on the exact costs of the running of this group and where is it budgeted for? And then I've got one more question. Is the project director going to be an internally filled position within our council groups or externally advertised?
So the program director role will be contestable, so it will be advertised, but that does not limit anybody in one of the existing councils from applying for that position. In regards to the cost of the group, at the moment each council is just covering their own costs. One of the roles for the project team is to try to refine the current budget on the assumption, if we say Y plus T is where Three Waters land, the 5 million that has been quoted in the past will be refined and broken down into another level of granularity.
Thank you.
Councillor Nelson?
On page 219, can you explain to me, there will be an impact to the way we currently operate due to the need to run the water services under an enhanced business unit structure and comply with expanded compliance requirements. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, sure. So with the changes to legislation, there are a lot more compliance requirements, both in the infrastructure space but also in regard to MB and the Commerce Commission. So the operation may look and feel the same and we may end up doing the same things, but there will be a lot of extra work that will be required as opposed to what we currently have to do.
Okay, so we couldn't run water the way we've been traditionally running it in council if it was an enhanced model. It would have to be sort of ring-fenced, we'd have to have things to a certain standard and we'd have to meet legislation requirements.
Yes, so we may say, well, just keep operating like that, but put those guardrails in, need more money, more staff, blah, blah, blah. But there is possibility.
You can almost say reprioritise it to make sure we focus on the basics. And the other question I have is maybe for you, David. With our current level of debt, the debt ceiling is relatively low, isn't it? Is that right? In terms of as a council.
Our current level of debt as a percentage of operating revenue is low. We're well within the LGFA's borrowing limit. So we're around 40% at the moment. The borrowing limit's 175.
But that's projected to increase significantly, isn't it, our level of debt with the projects that we're doing?
Yes, and the LTP describes that. The graphs show the increases in debt over the 10 years of the LTP and a decrease in the later years as we budget for loan repayments and particularly repaying debt on Homebush in anticipation of years 11, 12, 13 additional investment in Homebush.
Yep. So, thanks David. So in terms of, we have two options that we're consulting on the local water done well. One of them, with our debt getting closer and closer to that ceiling, it's almost making it unmanageable when we're restricting ourselves to one option. Is that right with that? I mean, if you're running an enhanced model, you have to have the debt capacity to fund it. But we're sort of taking away that option, even though it's one of our two options, because our debt's going to get progressively higher. And we won't have the ability to borrow.
It's one of the constraints with the LGFA. So, you know, if you need that 500%, you have to be a CCO. That's what legislation dictates.
So essentially, we've taken away one of the options that provided us with an option, and we're restricting what we can do to perhaps only one option.
Well, it's not us.
Yeah.
It's the funding agencies looking at the ability for a utilities entity, which will be the CCO standalone, and their ability to borrow against their revenue as an operating unit, and the Commerce Commission will look at that and compare it to how Chorus or Spark or any of the power companies operate. They'll treat the utilities entity as a utilities entity and pull it as being separated out of council, and then it gets a different credit rating and ability to borrow than it does if it sits within the council entity.
My feeling is I would hate to see what I believe to be a viable option, an enhanced model, taken away from us because we don't have the ability to get the debt to service it, and we're left with one option.
Yeah, we'll provide all that analysis.
That's great, because we wouldn't want to paint ourselves into a corner, would we?
No, that'll all be in
other side with that
the consultation document.
We're not making the rules as the council. The rules are being made for us.
Yeah, we're not making the rules, but we abide by the rules, and we operate within those rules.
Yes, that's right.
Sorry, I don't quite get you there. Okay, Councillor
I
Johnson.
don't explain that. I can explain that. If we paint ourselves into a corner because of the way we adhere to the rules, then we're taking away an option. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
If we get our debt so high and we take away our ability to have an in-house model, then we're giving ourselves just one option because of the way we operate. By nice to has, for example, by spending $44 million on things we don't need. That's the point that I'm making.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so good to have your opinion. We've got a different opinion. Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Oh, I lost my page then. Yeah, hang on a minute. I have a few questions. Thanks, Maz. It talks about the project steering group being able to approve project costs that exceed 30k. Then it talks about an initial contribution for activities. And it talks about project team authority to spend up to 30k. But you've also already said that each council is absorbing its own costs. So my question is, where's the 30k coming from? What's it for? And also, because a program director is going to be employed, and also I noticed that there's costs for iwi authorities on the AOG. So could you just explain that a little bit more? And then I've got another couple of questions.
Yeah, so there's no bucket of money or anything as such at this point. So when I say each council's carrying their costs, we're paying our own way. So we attend meetings, the work we're doing in the background, that's all each of our own costs. The 30k, or the reference to an actual financial split, is where we would be engaging consultants or a legal review or something like that. So any costs incurred in that space is evenly split across the four councils. Sorry, what was your question about the program director?
I was just wondering where the 30k, so there's the cost that we incur now is just BAU.
Yeah.
Then there's the 30k.
Which was just an arbitrary number that we thought, okay, let's get a mandate to sign that off in case we need to engage.
So is that the initial contribution for activities?
Yes. At this point, no money has changed hands.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is, these two clauses in here on page 230, which seem to argue with each other. So if you could just clarify these. It says, the council if someone terminates the agreement, right, the council remains responsible for their share of all costs incurred up to the date of termination. Then it says in the next one, if a council decides to terminate, that council shall reimburse the other councils all of their previously incurred costs. So one is saying they're only up for their costs to date, and the other one's saying they're up for everyone's costs to date if they terminate. So it seems to argue with itself.
Do you want me to take that up? So one's a withdrawal. So if council withdraws before a particular time, which in that particular time is the term of the agreement, so up until consultation.
Yeah. Otherwise,
so unilateral withdrawal, effectively. If that happens, then that council's responsible for all of the costs. Otherwise, it's just in an agreed termination.
Well, I think that's confusing. Because one is a stop now, and one is a once you're in the bucket, stop now.
So it has been through a legal review,
Oh, okay.
but again, that's the intention of that. And that was really part of, so this document's been in existence for some time now, and that was really trying to safeguard against a council. You know, everybody puts in, we're covering our own costs, everybody puts in a lot of effort, and then just decides, actually, we don't want to do that anymore, for, I guess, no good reason. The good reason in here is, the time frame is actually, once you've consulted with the community, and the community says, we don't want to go with this one, and council decides, we don't want to go with this one, then, the agreement's terminated, and there's no responsibility for all of those costs. You've just covered your own costs. As time has marched on, and we are very, very close to consultation, the risk of one council pulling out and withdrawing is minimal, I would suggest. So that, for me, there is little risk associated with that clause.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor
Thanks.
Thanks, Miss. My question is from page 225, and I just want to know, it says that South Wairakei District Council is the managing council. How did you come to that arrangement?
We didn't have much debate about that, to be honest. It was primarily because Robin Wells, who is currently the lead on the program, was kind of seconded in from South Wairarapa. And it just made logical sense at the moment. If we do any external engagements, that all goes through South Wairarapa in terms of them. They will raise a purchase order or do the invoicing and the administrative type piece of work. So it just kind of made sense that we just keep it that way.
And on page 227, sorry, you've got the council advisory oversight group, and the membership is 10 members. Now, I'm aware that you only don't want to pay too much out, so you restrict your membership. But Tararua, I think, is a different Kahungunu and Rangitania group. Did they consider wanting to have area members from their region?
Joe, can you speak to that?
What happened was that for Rangitani, I had a chat with the ones up in Tamaki, and they were happy for me to represent us club. And I just kept them informed of me, just like you guys.
And I represent the PhD.
Thank you.
Are there further questions? Councillor Lerner.
Thank you, Miss. I just note on page, this question coming up here, page 218, officers have identified there is a need to have as long a view as reasonably practical for the financial projections as we're dealing with assets that have a long life. And so I just want to clarify, so that the new financial projections that have been done are being done over 20 years as opposed to 10?
Yes, that's right. 20 years.
And that's for both models that likely to be looked at?
Yes.
Cool. And secondly, further down that page it talks about some of the investment needs of, it talks about the investment need for Masterton District Council, for example, home washing. It needs to be explored, and so I guess the new modelling will give us an indication of the costs to the entity of those assets, but will we get those costs for the assets right through the 4 regions?
Yes, it's just the level of granularity that we are mindful of, because, years 10 to 20 are always so much more tentative than, your first 3 years. So we'll all be running, similar line items like, say, wastewater renewals, treatment plant upgrades, that sort of thing. And then there may be the odd big ticket item like Homebush. So, and each council will be doing the same.
And so will we as elected members eventually see the list of those big ticket items right across the 4 regions? In their financial projections or investment needs?
I need to go back and check that. We have a PSG meeting tomorrow, and there are a few things around that we need to confirm, just make sure that everyone's aligned, and whatever information is released, everyone gets the same information.
Yeah, so obviously none of us have made our minds up yet, because there's still 2 models to be investigated.
That's right.
I'm just very hopeful that when we are consulting, and particularly, and again, I haven't made my mind up, but particularly with the Y+T model, because it does involve other entities. When we're consulting, I know we've made it clear already, we can't give information around decisions that are going to be made post this decision. But we can give information to the community around potential costs if the entity involves, for example, harmonisation. That will mean Masterton ratepayers will likely be paying a lot more to harmonise the price of the other entities within the big entity. And so will we be making those things clear in the consultation document? Because to not make those clear is putting our ratepayers, in my view, in a position where they're not in a good situation to give useful feedback on the model.
I think we'll be talking in general terms around like what this may be. Say use harmonisation as an example, what that may be, but we won't be able to say, this is the impact of that if the entity decides this or this.
But we could say it in general terms, right?
I think we need to explain what that is.
So people are comfortable, council officers are comfortable making that clear to the community. Thank you.
Yes, I think that's a really key piece of information that people are concerned about. So we need to provide as much information so that people understand, but without making suppositions and assumptions and potentially confusing people and saying it will be this or Just one other matter is that we're talking about the 2 options. We are required under the legislation to provide a proposal. So we need to discuss around and the impacts of that proposal, of going ahead with that proposal and not going ahead with that proposal. So that's how the consultation, so if you think about when we do a bylaw, for example, we have a statement of proposal, this is what our bylaw is, and then we ask questions around that to the community and have that information around what that proposal is. That's the way that we're required under the legislation to present the information. So we'll be working through that over the next few weeks with you, and that's what we'll put then into the consultation document for sign-off for consultation.
Councillor Nelson?
Yeah, just a response to that. So in regards to consultation, there won't be a preferred option that council puts in that document, as we've had preferred options for other things in the past.
So the wording in the legislation is a proposal. There isn't, and so it's very confusing because you'll know that there's, and we talk about it in some of the other reports, that there's a 3rd bill at the moment which is supposed to apply to arrangements after this arrangement, so further down the track, 5 years down the track, and we want to change whatever the entity is. So there's a consultation process around that, and that talks about preferred options and preferences. The legislation, so the Act that we're dealing with at the moment, talks about a proposal. We have to identify the options, we have to assess the options, but we have to identify a proposal and what the impacts of that proposal, or going ahead with that proposal, and the impacts of not going ahead with that proposal. So that's how the 2 options that we've got will be presented.
I see. So Councillor Helena's point before about people in our community being aware of the wider implications of the infrastructure needs of the other three councils will be made clear in that document.
Yeah, so we will have to look at, so there's 4 areas, and correct me if I'm wrong, so it's the impact of the proposal on rates, debt, I've got the other 2.
Renewable rates.
So yes, so we'll be sticking to what those requirements are, so it's really clear of going ahead and not going ahead.
What's reading it? Thank you.
But the one thing I would say without, is don't get too carried away though on thinking that in a 20-year thing that we're going to be the ones suffering. It's not going to look like that at all. Okay, Councillor Lord.
I'm curious on your reviewed figures of projects going forward, and the one that leaps to my mind is Featherston Wastewater Project, which is in the W+T books at 28.7 million. And there's talk, there was a report saying it's 213 million. I'm not saying that's correct, but you appreciate that it's quite a lot of money, the difference. So are you looking at, for instance, Featherston's wastewater plant and saying that what they've got on the books for currently 10 years, going to be 20, is sufficient? Because my understanding is that's for a short-term solution, not a long-term solution.
No, we're not doing due diligence on each other's accounts. The audits take place, there is the whole process around long-term plan and annual plan cycles, so there may be a due diligence component post-consultation if Y+T is the option. I imagine there would be.
You would expect there to be?
Well, there'd be a certain amount of discovery that each council may require before you enter into a shareholders agreement.
Right, well I suppose that's one of those details that'll come out in that discussion about a shareholders agreement, because that's, thank you, I hadn't even thought of that. Cheers me up.
Okay. Is somebody prepared to move the recommendation on page 217? Move Councillor Bayer.
Sorry, just to clarify.
Probably can't. Oh, sorry, part of the recommendation, okay, we also need to just add Councillor Bowyer's name to authorise His Worship the Mayor and Councillor Bowyer to sign the agreement, because Craig's on that committee. So Craig, I might just, is somebody prepared to move? Councillor Lennox, second Councillor Holmes. Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Well, we're going to have a 10-minute break.